Hello guys, welcome back. And today, I'm going to try and answer the question, are William Nylander and the Toronto Maple Leafs close on a potential contract? William Nylander and the Toronto Maple Leafs have been ramping up the contract talks in the last week since I made the last video on William Nylander, and it really begs the question, how close are they to a potential contract and potential deal? Now, most of you guys know already that William Nylander is the last RFA on the books in the NHL right now. Nick Ritchie signed last week with the Anaheim Ducks, and that just leaves William Nylander left alone as the sole RFA left for the season. But as I said before, both William Nylander and Kyle Dubas of the Toronto Maple Leafs are starting to get those contract talks really working now, and while it hasn't been really close on where the fair value is for William Nylander, they're starting to talk a lot more than where they were last week, and they're starting to make a lot of progress. Now, Chris Johnson, of course one of the reporters for Sportsnet, said on Hockey Central yesterday that there's still a fair gap between what Nylander and the Toronto Maple Leafs think he is worth and where the value is, which makes sense because obviously we haven't heard a bona fide answer on how much money Nylander is looking for, or how much the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking for. So it seems like there's a fair gap between what the team and the player wants, which makes sense because this contract negotiations have been going on for quite a while. Now, right after my last Nylander video, Kyle Dubas and William Nylander met in Switzerland to talk about things, maybe blow a little bit of the pressure off of William Nylander to get some contract negotiations going, but also to just talk with him and to get something settled here. While there's still a fair gap between the contract negotiations, it seems like they're now on good terms now, and there's no really bad blood between the two, which is definitely important. The last thing the Toronto Maple Leafs need is a disgruntled William Nylander from contract negotiations just not working out quite yet, and Kyle Dubas going to Switzerland all on his own to talk with him. I feel like that would definitely help Nylander's situation and definitely help his morale, especially if he comes back with the team. But of course, most of you guys know already that there's a December 1st deadline to a signing, to a trade. After that December 1st deadline, he has to sit, he can't play for the team, and he doesn't have a contract after that. And I think after that season, he becomes a UFA or something like that. But he can't play throughout the rest of the season if he goes past that December 1st deadline, which William Nylander doesn't want to do that. Toronto Maple Leafs definitely don't want that to happen. So I think before that deadline, we're going to see some action, we're going to see some drama involved, but we're ultimately going to see a decision made, whether it be through a trade or a signing. Now, Chris Johnson also talked about some potential teams that would be interested in a guy like William Nylander if he were to be put on a trade block. And he mentioned Nashville first, which makes some sense there. Of course, Nashville's got a plethora of young defensemen, plethora of defensemen in general, and of course, Toronto needs that kind of stuff. So it could work, and it would definitely add to Nashville's offense. Now, Chris Johnson also mentioned Carolina, which could make a lot of sense. Of course, they got guys like Slavin, they got guys like Pesce, two excellent young defensemen, and Carolina might want to give up for a guy like Nylander. And maybe this is towards late November where Carolina's offense might be slowing down. They might want to add another punch to the offense like William Nylander, and that would definitely do a lot to adding to their offensive group. He also said a lot of other teams would have interest too, not naming any names, but saying that there would be a lot of interest for him, which I agree with. If William Nylander were to be put on the trade block officially, there'd be a lot of teams going for him, a lot of teams fielding the offers for him, because William Nylander is obviously a fantastic young player, and a lot of teams would want that type of player on their team. But if it does come down to it, Toronto definitely wants to get him extended. I don't think they want to go towards the trade route. I don't think they want to go towards that December 1st deadline. They want to get him signed as soon as possible. And even though there's a big gap there, their best interest is to keep William Nylander. But there's a lot of contract speculation going around right now on where Nylander will sign, what he should sign for, and of course the term. And of course with William Nylander, you have to ask a question, what will he actually sign for? Now, I've heard some speculation about a long-term deal, maybe a short-term deal, but I think when it comes down to it, I think William Nylander will ultimately sign for a short-term deal. Not 1 year, not 2 years, but I think 4 years has been thrown out there by a couple of reporters. I think Chris Johnson said 4 years. I feel like that's right around what will happen there. Maybe 3, but I think 4 is the sweet spot for both William Nylander and the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially if that December 1st deadline comes closer and closer. At first, I thought I was probably going to get 5, maybe 6 years on that contract, but as this deadline is coming closer, and as contracts are really ramping up, I think that, honestly, William Nylander will start to sign for a little bit less, term, and of course, he's missing games right now, he's missing money, not playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, and I think that's ultimately costing him his bottom line. So I think the best interest for him is to maybe sign a shorter deal, and maybe sign a even less value deal. While I think William Nylander is worth a lot of money, I still think that at this point, he's risked a lot of money not playing, and I think ultimately he will sign for less. And this is exactly what Kyle Dubas wants and exactly what he's going to get. Of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a pretty good offensive team. They haven't played like that in the last couple of games, but it's still been very, very good across the board for them. And William Nylander is not a guy that they really do need. He'd be great, but it's not a guy that they do need. And that's definitely, I think, raising the contract talks a little bit lower and raising that average annual value lower for William Nylander. And ultimately, it could be less than the Pastrnak deal, and it could possibly be less than $6 million, which, if you would have said that 2 weeks ago, would have been crazy. But of course, while we heard that there was a substantial gap, I think in the next week we'll start to see that close. Of course, Kyle Dubas has met with his agent. Kyle Dubas has met with William Nylander. So I think that ultimately we'll start to see some more information. We'll start to see some more negotiations to ultimately, I feel like the deal will come in the next 2 weeks. Now, I'm not sure in the next week or so, but I feel like we'll start to see the gap ultimately shorten a lot more. So for right now, the negotiations are definitely closer to getting done than they were a week ago or even 2 weeks ago, but they're still pretty big. So I would expect it to take a little bit of time for these to shorten, for the contract negotiations to get a little bit closer, and of course, what these two parties agree with, whether it's the average annual value or the years. I feel like we'll start to get some agreement between the both sides, and in the next week, we'll see some definite progress. But it seems like we're getting a lot closer to contract negotiations and to the contract deal than we were last week, which is good to hear and a good news for the Nylander front and good news for Toronto Maple Leafs fans. And I feel like in the next 2 weeks we will see a deal done. Maybe not in the next week, but I feel like in that second week we'll start to see something and we'll start to see an actual contract for once. But of course, with this William Nylander situation, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about William Nylander and the contract negotiations right now? Do you think it's best to trade him? Do you think it's best to sign him right now? And what do you think would be the sweet spot for a deal and a contract for William Nylander? Now, after this video, if you want some more Grav goodness, you can watch this video where I talk about Connor McDavid and if he can win the Stanley Cup with the Edmonton Oilers. But that's going for it, guys. If you guys enjoy, make sure you like and subscribe. Again, tell me down below, what do you think about William Nylander and the whole contract situation with the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.